எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். என் பேர் அகிலா நட்டேசன். I live in Michigan for about 18 years with my husband Shankar and two kids Manav and Medha. My son Manav is in 9th grade and my daughter Medha is in 6th grade. I work as a sales operations lead for North America at Aptiv. For the past 2 years, I'm volunteering at NSNA as Nanal Committee Chairperson. Michigan Nanal team we introduced Inspirational interview அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு section, and in every edition of Nanal, we interviewed a Nagarathar who is very knowledgeable in a particular field and who can be a great inspiration to our younger generation. We have so far interviewed 4 inspirational Nagarathars. In that list today, we are going to interview Dr. Priya Sethu Chockalingam from Boston. She holds a PhD degree from India and has more than 2 decades of drug discovery and development experience in several major biopharmas and biotechs in the US. She is currently Vice President and Head of Clinical Bioanalytics and Translational Sciences, working towards a cure for serious genetic diseases at a gene and cell therapy company in Boston. She's here with us to share her career journey and experience. Please join me in welcoming our guest. Welcome, Priya.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now let me introduce the interviewers from Michigan. First, a very knowledgeable Montessori teacher, Shivagami Ganesh. Shiva owns and directs a Montessori school in Michigan for the past 15 years. She's a certified Montessori teacher. She also has masters in business administration and a master's in human resources and organizational development. She participates in various events through the American Montessori Society. She's a mother of 3 beautiful children. She authors early childhood-based articles for various publications. She does an ongoing workshop for parents of her community called Parenting the Montessori Way. She teaches Mahabharatam in Chinmaya Mission's Balavihar for the past 14 years. Welcome, Shiva.
Thank you, Akila. Thank you for the sweet introduction.
Second is a calm and composed youth, Deepa Veerappan. Deepa is a grade 12 student at Riverside Secondary School in Windsor, Ontario. She's interested in science and medicine and plans on becoming a doctor. In her free time, Deepa volunteers for NSNA and is one of the designers for the Nanal editions. She also volunteered for Silambu Tamil School and Windsor Regional Hospital. Welcome, Deepu.
Thank you, Auntie.
Now, over to my Nanal Committee co-chair, Visalakshi Muthuraman.
Thank you, Akila. So, என் பேர் விசாலாட்சி முத்துராமன். I've been living in Michigan for the past 20 years with my husband Muthu, and I have 2 kids. And my daughter is Kritika Muthuraman, and she's doing second year pre-med in University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And my son is a 10th grader, and his name is Karthik. And I work as a reporting and analytics lead in General Motors, and I have been in the IT field for the past 15 years. So happy to be part of this interview and looking forward to hearing more from Priya. And over to Shiva.
Thank you. Thank you, Visha. Thank you, Akila. So, hi, Priya. So
Hello.
good to have you here today. So, first question, right? Like, romba soft ஆரம்பிக்கலாம், like, your background and the madri. So, we'd love to learn more about you beyond your professional background, right? So,
Yes.
like where you live, your family, children, and what they do, right? So, over to you.
Yes, yeah. So, என் பேரு Priya Sethu Chockalingam. And you all probably know, I live in Boston, in Sudbury. Exactly, it's a suburb of Boston, very close, not very far from Cambridge and Boston area. My husband, எல்லாருக்கும் தெரிஞ்சிருக்கும், he's a supply chain expert, Mark Chockalingam. And I have 2 sons. The older one, his name is Vignesh. He just started his MBA at UPenn. And the younger one, Kanan Chockalingam, he just started undergrad at Cornell. So that's about me. And thanks for this opportunity. I should have started with this. It's really, a pleasure meeting with you guys. And you are also accomplished. And, I feel so privileged to be talking to you. And happy to share my experience, my career journey to motivate and inspire the younger generation towards science. As you see, my sons are not really into science, but we want more and more young students like Deepa to get into science, healthcare, and medicine. And about me, I grew up in India, in Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. I'm the oldest of the 3 daughters to my parents. And My dad, late Sri Kumarappan, he's the sole reason for who I am today. So I said 3 daughters. So his primary goal in life was not only to provide love and care to his girls, but also the best or the highest education that one could believe, one could imagine. And he encouraged us to dream big and helped us build our own identity and self-esteem that we still preserve, all 3 of us. With my parents' support, I completed my PhD in India before marriage. And only then I came to the US. And since I came to the US, I've been only working, no more studies in the US. And my sisters are also equally well educated and are in responsible careers in India. I'm so proud of them. And some of you, might have heard this song, Ma Berum Sabaidanil Nee Nadanda Unakku Maalegal Vizha Vendum. And that was my dad's dream for his girls. So girls out there, dream big. And parents, we are all parents now. I think the biggest wealth we can give to our children are education and self-confidence. Yeah, I believe in that firmly.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. So I was brought up in Coimbatore too. So and unga son வந்து யூபென் போறான்னு சொல்லியிருக்கான். இப்போ வருண் வந்து he's a junior in high school. So இப்போ summerல he went to Walton couple weeks for the summer school. So அதுல இருந்து இப்போ யூபென் தான் சொல்லிட்டு இருக்கான். So which is nice to hear. So
it's a great school. Yeah, UPenn, great college, university, and Wharton School, great school.
Yeah, nice. Over to Deepa.
What are some of your hobbies or interests outside of work?
Yes. So when my boys were younger, we enjoyed biking and baking together. All 3 of us are great bakers. Actually, now my boys are even better bakers than I am. And they also do excellent cooking. They just used to do cooking with me. But now that they've gotten busy and they're away now, as of this September, we are empty nesters. I do a lot of hiking with my team or at work and also with Boston friends. But we do cooking and baking when we all get together for the holidays. We don't stop that because that's something, we enjoy doing together. And in addition, the major thing is I am into yoga and meditation for decades and decades. Actually, I started off when I was a young child learning from my grandfather directly, a Siva yogi, back in India. And I continued on, and that gives me a lot of inner peace and calm. And that's something I continue. And I want to keep doing it.
I love that. That's beautiful.
So personal nama தெரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டோம் how your dad was inspirational, right? Oldest of the 3, so உங்களுக்கு அந்த leadership responsibility எல்லாம் ஆட்டோமேட்டிக்கா சின்னத்துல இருந்து வந்திருக்கு. So it shows right now. அப்புறம் இந்த yoga, so you're taking your mind in the right way, right path, preparing yourself for this great profession, so which is all great. So இப்போ next section, right? So நம்மளோடதுல வந்து personal முடிஞ்சிச்சு, இப்போ education and transition to US அந்த மாதிரி தான் we wanted to structure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we want you to describe your educational background, what and why you chose this path, right? How did your education influence your career in US? So we want to know more about that, right? In US, you didn't go into school at all, right? Like படிக்கிறதுக்கு. So you were just working. So அதனால அது எப்படி அப்படிங்கிறது வந்து we want to know.
Yes, certainly. So I have a bachelor's and a master's in biochemistry, followed by a PhD in biochemistry. So originally, Deepa Madhuri, I also wanted to go to medical school. But then towards when it was becoming a reality, I got cold feet. Do I have the mental strength to face pain and, suffering on a daily basis in patients? I just doubted myself. And I didn't go to medical school. I was kind of stranded. Oh God, I didn't apply for anything else like any other college. So that's when biochemistry was kind of new. This was 3 decades ago. Biochemistry was new in India, and Bharatiya University, that was in Coimbatore, that was the first year they introduced in some affiliated colleges. So that was the only one that was kind of open. When I was looking to register, I thought, okay. And it was considered a challenging subject because it was new to everybody. And of course, it's a challenging subject. And I thought, okay, let me give it a try. And that's how I went into biochemistry. But then after I got in, I just started loving, and really, it just grew on me. The subject grew on me. I started enjoying, and you wouldn't believe it's kind of close to medicine, because everything that, not everything, but most of the things that medical students would study, like, human physiology, metabolism, everything is part of biochemistry. So for me, it was kind of close to what I originally wanted to do, but no regrets that I didn't go to medical school. But now I still treat patients, right? I mean, find a cure for patients like with major diseases. So it all went well. After completing my master's, my parents encouraged me, and I took this CSIR NET exam. I don't know if you all know, maybe Deepa wouldn't know. In India, CSIR, it's Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. It's a national level exam that we go and take in Delhi, people who want to pursue a PhD, and so it's fully funded. We get fellowship, and it's not easy to get selected, because like thousands and thousands of students would come all over from India to Delhi and take the exam, but every year they would only give like 100 fellowships, So I was lucky enough to get selected among the top ones to get that fellowship. And that fellowship allows me to do my PhD in any of the CSIR as a dynamic network of like 37 laboratories across India, specializing in different areas. Like you would have heard about CLRI, leather, CDRI, CCMB in Hyderabad. So each one specializing in different. So because CFTRI is closer to Mysore, in Coimbatore, CFTRI is in Mysore, and it's closer to Mysore, I chose to do my PhD with this fellowship. CFTRI is it's food technological, Central Food Technological Research Institute, food. It's about food science, all this baby food, and how do you, improve the shelf life of food, and spirulina for nutrients. It's everything. Like it's all about, it's a big, I don't know if you had a chance to see CFTRI in Mysore. It's one of the palaces, the main building, but it's like a city inside CFTRI. So that's where I went there. And then after 2 years, I show my work. I again go to Delhi, show my work, give an interview to qualify for the senior research fellowship, meaning like another 2 more or 3 more years of funding. And that's how I ended up doing my PhD. And CFTRI is unique compared to the other CSIR institutes, because it's also called United Nations University, meaning foreign nationals can come get their master's or PhD in food science and get their degree in their respective countries. That's why it's called United Nations University. And so there were like tons of almost 40% inside or foreign nationals. So I already got exposed, and the hostel is called International Hostel, very beautiful, like campus and hostel. And it was a wonderful life, and of course, very demanding. And I got exposed to Western food, foreigners, and everything. And like I was able to complete my PhD within 4 years. Actually, it's kind of a record for CSIR, history, thanks to all my great mentors at CFTRI. And while I was wrapping up my PhD, I got an offer, and I accepted actually to go to Japan, to the Osaka National Institute of Biomedicine, to do my postdoctoral research. But that's when I got engaged to Mark. And so instead of flying to Japan, I came to the US. And like submitting my thesis in Mysore, you won't believe, submitting my thesis in Mysore and wedding in Chettinadu and leaving from Chennai to the US all happened within like it was very stressful at that time, but it all happened, and I came to the US. That's the story, like my educational background.
Sure. So very nice. So இப்போ வந்து 4 yearsல முடிச்சிருக்கீங்க. So within few monthsல இதெல்லாம் handle பண்றது, I think you would have handled it pretty well. So இப்போ அதோட அடுத்த section, right? How did your education influence your career in US?
Yeah. So I came when I came to the US, Mark was in Memphis, Tennessee, like working. He just finished his PhD in finance, and he just started his career with FedEx. And that's the reason why I ended up in Memphis, Tennessee. And Memphis is famous for blues and soul music, you are all aware of. And Southerners are really nice, friendly people. and very welcoming. And I landed here. My wedding was end of November. I came here in December, kind of closer to the holidays. It was a beautiful season in the US, right? Holiday season. I totally enjoyed. And the transition was very smooth because, not culture too much. There wasn't any culture shock and all that because I had already gone out of my hometown for master's and out of the state for my PhD and now out of the country. But at CFTRI, I was already exposed to the Western world, right? So it was really very smooth. And I just rested and relaxed only until the end of the holidays. Once the New Year started, I got restless. Oh God, I have to find my postdoctoral research, job somewhere. And I started visiting, as you know, University of Tennessee Medical Campus is in Memphis. And then the rest in Knoxville. So the medical healthcare campus is all in Memphis, and that worked out so beautifully. I started visiting different departments, talking to the professors. I also raided, St. Jude, because St. Jude is very big, right? And it was my dream to work for St. Jude, the Children's Hospital. And I also started meeting, scientists, big scientists there to get a postdoctoral job. And I just rushed into learning to drive because within CFTRI, I had a bike, meaning a bicycle. That was it. I came here to, and a motorbike. But then, so here is when I started learning to drive and rushed to get the driver's license. And one morning I said, oh, I'm just driving myself to go do an interview at St. Jude myself. I drove a long way, but then there was an accident in between and they just turned us everywhere, and then I lost track. And then I was looking at the map when I was supposed to turn and I got into a big accident. And that's how I didn't end up at St. Jude, because the accident happened when I was going for the final interview. But anyways, everything happened within the first 4 months. But by May of the same year, I was already working at the University of Tennessee Medical School in the Department of Molecular Sciences under Dr. Jarrett. He's not at the UT Memphis now. He's with the University of Texas, Austin now. I still keep in touch with him. Dr. Jarrett, so he hired me as a postdoctoral research to work on muscular dystrophy. So muscular dystrophy is a group of genetic diseases that affect children, and that leads to progressive muscle weakness and loss, actually breakdown. The children, finally, they have no muscles at all. They're skeletons. It's a very bad disease. So I worked on that disease. And the wonder is Dr. Jarrett believed in me, because at that time, I didn't even have my PhD degree in hand, because in India, especially the CSIR labs, when you submit the thesis, they send to one national and one international reviewer that we don't know who they are. And they take their time to review and give their comments. And sometimes we might have to go back and do additional work and revise the thesis. So everything takes a year and a half before you get the degree. So here I was there, no degree. So Dr. Jarrett talked to my PhD supervisor in CFTRI, and he got my transcripts of my pre-qualifying exams and some recommendation letters, and he just trusted and that my supervisors, PhD supervisors, words, and offered me the job. I'm just still very grateful, and that was great. And that's how
That's so
I
interesting.
started my academic career.
Yeah, so நீங்க வந்து நாங்க எங்களோடது எஜுகேஷனல் பேக்ரவுண்ட் அங்கே இருந்தாலும் when you came here, how did you transition? ஆனா அது வந்து you put it out very nicely. ஏன்னா அதுக்கு நடுவில் உங்களுக்கு இன்டரிம் ஒரு எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் இருந்திருக்கு, அதனால யூஎஸ் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் வாஸ் ஈவன் மோர் ஸ்மூதர். அப்புறம் இங்கே வந்தும் கோர்ஸ் ஆஃப் ஆக்ஷனே மாறிடுச்சு ஒரு ஆக்சிடென்ட்னால. எவ்ரி திங் ஹேப்பன்ஸ் ஃபார் அ ரீசன், which is amazing. So very nice.
Yeah.
So Deepa has a question for you too. Yeah. The education.
So, Anthony, you சொன்ன மாதிரி your education was mainly in India. So we want to know, how was just the transition, moving to the US and building your career here?
You started out, right? So you started out saying that. அது இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் elaborate
பண்ணுங்க. Sure. So, இப்போ நான் சொன்னேன்ல, I started my postdoctoral research But then inherently, I also like teaching. Like I love teaching. So the professor Jared, he actually let me handle some of his lectures to medical students and PhD students. So I started teaching biochemistry and human physiology and all that to medical students and PhD students. And so the department changed my title from within a year, they changed my title from a postdoc to an instructor. Because if I want to start writing grant proposals, only the grant proposals can secure me a tenured position, right? I have to have a permanent position with the university because postdoc is not considered a permanent job, right? So that's the reason why they were nice enough. And since I was teaching actively, they changed it to a permanent instructor title. So I could apply for grants, and I was writing grant proposals to Muscular Dystrophy Association. My dream was to stay in academics, teach and do research, become an assistant professor, and then become an associate and a professor like Dr. Jarrett. Like that was. But that's when the Mark decided to move from Memphis to Boston because he changed jobs. And so I was still there and still continuing whatever the grant proposals. And that's when 9/11 happened. And he was still flying up and down and from between Boston and Memphis. Then I decided, oh God, no, we don't want to do this. I'm going to move to Boston. Whatever happens, whether it's academic or industry job, I'll take whatever comes first. And that's why, and Vignesh was only like 2 years old at that time, like when we moved, my older son. So that's why I moved to Boston. And Wyatt Ayers, that was my first job interview. I was trying both academics and industry. And you might have all heard about Wyatt Ayers. It has a big name. It was a big biopharma of like 60,000 people. Over-the-counter products, you might have heard about Centrum, Apple, Robitussin. All those are from Wyatt Ayers. And then the major medicines examples are Faxar, Protonix, and these are some, and Rapamune. These are some names you might remember for big drugs. And they had a huge musculoskeletal department. And that was my first interview as a scientist. And because of my experience working on muscular dystrophy, and I didn't even negotiate. I took the job, like, well, I'm taking it, done. And that's how I ended up in the industry. But I think that was the right decision, and everything went so well since then. I hope that explains like
So how so sorry இப்போ வந்து இந்த செகண்ட் செக்ஷன் வந்து எஜுகேஷன் அண்ட் டிரான்சிஷன் டு யுஎஸ்ஏ சொல்லியிருந்தோம் ரைட் லைக் ஸோ அந்த இது இப்போ வரைக்கும் இருந்துச்சு பட் இதையே இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் எலாபரேட் பண்றதுக்கு we have another question so right you started your career in academics so அதனால தான் இப்போ எப்படி மூவ் பண்ணீங்க அதை டிஸ்கஸ் பண்ணீங்க ஆனா how did this experience shape your further careers right like your shape your direction in the industry அதையும் ஆட் பண்ணிக்கிட்டீங்கன்னா it will be nice
yeah sure so நான் வந்து பயத்துல சேர்ந்தப்போ musculoskeletal like what I was doing in academics, it's like understanding the disease and the mechanism and why do patients get the disease. அதே மாதிரி தான் I was working in early stages of drug development, like drug discovery and development, trying to understand. And I said I was in musculoskeletal, right? So I worked on osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, tendonitis, and bone like because Wyatt was big into bone morphogenic protein, like the BMP2 bone repair. So I worked on all of these things. And then the Wyatt acquisition happened, and the company that Pfizer acquired it. They thought musculoskeletal was risky, and then we started working on fibrotic indications. At that time, in the first few years, I realized, okay, the early discovery is good, but that's not really keeping me, like motivated, because you try like 2 dozen things, one may go forward. Like when I see even one drug going to the market before I retire, like if I am in the very early stages, but then I kind of moved with my programs from because as PhDs, not only heading teams, we also lead programs. So along with my program, and the program kind of progressed from early discovery into like early development, I also moved along and I enjoyed, and I found my passion in later stages of drug development, meaning clinical trials, like biomarker discovery and then submission, regulatory submissions, approvals. And I kind of steered my career towards that. And I stayed there in late stages, so clinical development. And then I was there for a long, long time. That was my foundation. And then I moved to Shire, also very big Irish company with great culture. And now it's also acquired anyway. And that's when I worked on these rare genetic diseases, because it's what Shire was all about, and this devastating and life-threatening diseases. My team was responsible for immunology and hematology pipeline of Shire. And one example is, I was just talking to Shiva the other day. I worked on like from the beginning to the end of beginning, when I say like development, like because not from doctors, beginning of the early development to approval of one drug called Takhzyro for hereditary angioedema. It's an immunology disease, and what happens is the patients get recurring severe attacks in the body where the entire body can swell. And if the swelling happens in the respiratory tract, they can die, actually. So it's a very bad disease. And you don't know when the attacks will come. And if it is in the stomach, it just kills the patients. It's just so bad. And so we covered and developed and got the approval of this drug called Takhzyro. The Takhzyro means attacks zero, because the patients don't get any attack. That's why we named it. Actually, we all together, I'm just proud to say that I'm one of the core team members who worked on that approval, and we all sat together and like decided on the name. So it's just an example. And yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. So இப்போ வந்து இன்செப்ஷனல் ஸ்டேஜ்ல இல்லாம ரைட் லைக் இந்த ஃபைனல் ஸ்டேஜஸ்ல இருந்தா உங்களுக்கு மோட்டிவேட்டிங்கா இருக்கும்னு யூ கைண்ட் ஆஃப் டிரான்சிஷன் ரைட். ஸோ அது அதே இது இன்னுமே இந்த ரேர் ஜெனட்டிக்ஸ்ல ஒர்க் பண்ண ஆரம்பிக்கிறப்போ இன்னுமே இட் வில் பி மோட்டிவேஷனல் உங்களுக்கு ரைட். பிகாஸ் இந்த மாதிரி ரேர் ஜெனட்டிக் டிசீசஸ்க்கு நம்ம ஒரு ட்ரக் கண்டுபிடிக்கிறோம் இல்ல நம்மளோட கான்ட்ரிபியூஷன் இருக்குங்கிறது. ஸோ which is all amazing. So very nice. அப்புறம் you also worked in the Takhzyroக்கு. So you worked from the inception stage to the final stage. So you have the experience of completing the whole cycle too. So which is all amazing. So which is nice. And that's a question. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the industry work that you started with. We'd like to know, what are the ups and downs that you faced in the early years of your career? And then also the second part to that is, how did you balance work and life?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. Of course, ella job ups and downs. My ups were, all these, like when we see that we are bringing a cure to the patients who are just so desperate, that's like our ups, like really like, it's like steroid injection pota madri, that brings us so much motivation, energy. And also the publications, patents, presentations, my team, like in every company, great teams. And I still keep in touch with all of them, even in the prior jobs, and those are all really big ups. But then the downs, acquisition, I mentioned a few already, right? Like, and this is inevitable in this industry. You cannot avoid it. Like, a company acquires another one, and then suddenly, like everything changes, and the prioritization and the restructuring, and those are all downs. Because suppose like I am retained, I still have the survival guilt, right? Oh God, like I see, it's hard to see the entire organization let go, but I'm here, right? But in other times, when I'm let go, the entire world shatters in front of me, like, like doubting my own self-worth. But that was then. But now when I think back, all these unintended changes, they all made me stronger, more resilient, and gave me lasting friendships and actually better opportunities, not only for me, even for others. If that happened, my team members who face the same thing, better opportunities, and and above all, made me believe that God and universe, they always have better plans for us, like and because we don't control everything, only to some extent we can control, but then at some point we have to trust and just go with the flow. whatever happens, it's happening for a reason and for something better. So I believe in that now, thinking back about everything. And then about the work-life balance, I would say the balance is much better in industry compared to academics. I mean, I don't say, like academics, there is no balance, but it depends on what academic. Like you want to be on the top doing both research and teaching, like there is constant stress about bringing in grants and like you are 24/7 thinking about work. But in the industry, that's not the case. It is demanding and can be stressful at times, but there is work-life balance. And in my case, my boys, both of them, they started daycare very young, and then they enjoyed being in the daycare and then in aftercare, and they even enjoyed being there. So I didn't feel bad about that. And I'm very organized. I plan everything very carefully, and I also like multitasking. So managing work, home, and kids went smoothly, I think.
Very nice. Very nice.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah, attitude is everything, right? So நீங்க வந்து எல்லாத்தையுமே அந்த positive right attitude with the spiritual touch of it and planning, and you said you do yoga, like you practice yoga for many years. So those things all help. இன்னொன்னு நீங்க சொன்னீங்க after careல கூட குழந்தைங்க இருப்பாங்க, but they enjoyed it, right? So that's how you brought in your family culture, which is all amazing. So yeah, so the next section to it is your successes, right? So what is your current work in drug development? What are recent advancement in drug development for major diseases that you're working on? Yeah.
Yes. So currently I work for a cell and gene therapy company. So we work on these devastating, life-threatening, very serious diseases, all genetic, rare diseases. And I report to the CMO, and my function is responsible for when a clinical trial is done, like all the bioanalysis, like for pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, immunogenicity, safety. There's like a bunch of things we do. And especially when it comes to cell and gene therapy, the safety aspects are, we have to be much more careful than the other modalities, because this is a living drug. It's going to be in the body, right, forever. So that's why FDA and other regulatory agencies around the world, they have a higher bar for us. We have to actually follow them for 15 years after the treatment. So that's my function, the responsibility, like all this bioanalysis and data generation to show that the drug is efficacious and safe, not just then, but forever, meaning for 15 years follow-up. And so it's high visibility function, but it also comes with its own like risk, and like we are liable, answerable to the patients, to the agency, to the company, right? So yeah, it's but so far we're doing a good job. And so you all know very well what cell and gene therapies are. Like gene therapy, we try to kind of replace or introduce a gene or correct a gene. You can either do it in vivo within the body or ex vivo outside the body and then put it back. And then the cell therapy is you're kind of altering or repairing a set of gel cells, or that are actually like oncology. You have to get rid of all the the cells that are cancerous, or you're using cells to deliver, like take a cell therapy into the body. So that's cell therapy. In terms of, for cell therapy, it can be autologous, meaning you can take the patient's cells out, the same patient's cells out, edit or do whatever you want and put them back. That's autologous. In certain cases for oncology cancer, we use allogenic, meaning you take the cells from a healthy donor and engineer them and put them in the patient. That's allogenic, right? And in terms of advancement, you might have heard about like genome editing, like even more advanced is base editing, like correcting one base at a time. So genome editing is a kind of gene therapy where we use technologies called CRISPR. Like CRISPR recently got the Nobel Prize and all that the year before or something. So using those technologies, we kind of make very targeted changes to the DNA sequence. That is the most recent in gene therapy, and that's what we used to. So like, for example, for ex vivo and in vivo, I can give you example like sickle cell patient, sickle cell disease. We take the patient's stem cells out, in vitro culture them and edit them, whatever you want to do, all the edits, correct the mutation that's causing the normal blood cell to become sickle, and that gives them this pain crisis called vaso-occlusive crisis, really bad. And we edit the cells and put them back in the patients. And then now their bone marrow, they starts making normal cells, and they are corrected forever, for life. That's ex vivo. And then the in vivo is for like liver diseases, like for example, glycogen storage disease. What we do is we deliver the entire cargo, like meaning this CRISPR, Cas9, and then the mRNA, the guide RNA, and all those through this to a delivery system like lipid nanoparticles into our body. And so that's in vivo. So, and then let the editing happen in vivo. In the liver, that's in vivo. So example, I told you glycogen storage disease. And then I explained what autologous and allogeneic are. And mostly for cancer, it's oncology, it's mostly allogenic, like meaning donor cells, like CAR-T therapy, where the donor cell T cells are engineered to make them CAR-T and then put it in the patient to target the cancer cells. And I hope that explains your question.
Yeah. In the sickle disease, நம்ம பேசிட்டு இருக்கிறப்போ you were explaining more, right? Like about this.
Yeah.
So இந்த மாதிரி rare diseases, அதுலயும் youngstersக்கு வரும், young adultsக்கு, right? Like, so they, with people like you developing drugs that can cure, like, edit பண்ணி திருப்பி உள்ள போட்டு, like, permanent cureங்கிறதெல்லாம் lifetime benefit for them, right? So for the youngsters, like whoever is facing this, it gives them a relief. So like a great thing that you're doing in the rare genetical diseases, like finding a cure and being in the final stages and getting that approved and things like that. So which is all great. So in order for our audience, right, like to understand more about the process and stuff, and evlo the genetic disease, evlo it could even harm infants, right? So andakaga we have another question that Deepa would like to ask. Yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned glycogen storage diseases, and especially in young children. So can you explain how you work towards bringing a cure for this disease, like a little bit more in detail?
Sure. So glycogen storage disease la nariya types irukku. So we are focusing more on the type 1, which is also called the von Geertz disease. It affects you will find out when they are like babies, 3 to 4 months la theriya aarambichirum. When they are adu enna nama body la when we eat, the excess of glucose is stored as glycogen, and whenever our sugar levels go down, the glycogen is converted into glucose, so we maintain like a normal glucose level in the body for functioning of the body and the brain. Everything needs sugar, right? Like ATP, like glucose, we need that. In the kids line, they have a mutation in the enzyme that converts this glycogen into glucose. So that enzyme is completely not functional. It does nothing. So what happens is the glycogen keeps storing. Like if they eat, the glycogen is stored and it's not converted to glucose. And because they don't have glucose, body la or alavukku mela glucose kila poichuna, they get seizures, like, and they can die. And the glycogen storing also is bad because that will go settle in the liver and in the kidney and cause damage. They'll have enlarged livers. But at least now the doctors know what it is. Like when the kids are like in pain and they are not like, they know what to test for. But decades ago, they didn't even know that this existed, right? So many, like thousands and thousands of babies died without even knowing what the disease was. But then later on, they found out this mutation, this disease, and they know, and then they started like giving them starch, like every few hours, they have to be given starch, because the starch slowly digests very slowly, and it can release glucose very slowly compared to the other sugars. And that's the reason why starch is given. And starting from they are babies, they have to be given starch like every few hours, all their life. Like they can never stop. And So Nariya, I mean, we have this GST gala, like meaning all the patients, their caregivers, and the academic researchers, and us companies working on the disease. We all get together one year, and that's like a fundraising event, and we meet with the patients and their parents, and we hear these horrible stories. But at least now, the babies are not dying. Parents know what it is. But then their nightmare is, oh, what if I just get up like my alarm rings and I don't get up in the night, and it is more than like whatever, 2 hours or whatever, and my baby will get seizures and die. This is like the nightmare. And this has happened too, like for some parents. But the parents are all well aware, they're well educated, so they know how to manage. And they've been managing all their life. Imagine a parent not being able to sleep, and some parents say, I have not slept for more than like 2 hours in my life, because that's how long they can. For some patients, it can be even smaller, like not even 2 hours. It can be like 90 minutes, and that's all they can sleep all their life. But they get used to it. Like maybe dad and mom, they take turns, but it's still, imagine their life. And then what they are saying is, now all those babies have grown and some are into college. But then what they are saying is, at least when they are with us, we were able to manage and make sure they are taking like every two. But now that they are in college, and if they don't pick up our phone, and they also have their monitor, right? Like the monitor is also linked to their phone, so they can see, and they're just looking at it. Oh, the sugar level is going down, and they try to call the son. Okay, did you take your car starch? And if they don't pick up the phone, it's like they're getting a heart attack. And then they say the only way out is we call 911 to go knock at the dorm door, right? So now they are more helpless because things are not under their control. But anyway, the youngsters, they know and they are managing, but this is their lifestyle. Like this is how. And imagine we bring a cure to them. And there are some transient efficacies with AAV, like the adeno vector associated, infection of the gene therapy, that exists. But then our case, what we are doing is we are trying to correct, I told you, we are just doing this in vivo gene editing and correcting the gene so the kids can make the enzyme and they lead a normal life. And so it's a bad disease. I'm just trying to explain how bad it can be. And when we think about it, we all should feel, we are all blessed. We are gifted. We should never complain about anything, because when you think about all these, the diseases and the caregivers, their parents, there's horror stories, we should never complain about anything. Yeah, it helps to understand.
That was for sure.
இப்போ இந்த glycogen storage diseaseக்கும் permanent cure sickle disease மாதிரி permanent cure கண்டுபிடிக்க முடியும் இந்த gene
yeah, that's what we are doing now. We are trying to, yes.
அப்ப என்ன ஒரு relief, not just for the child but for the entire family.
Yes, family, yes.
Lifestyle எல்லாமே quality lifestyle which is all awesome. Wow, this is amazing. So இப்போ வந்து இதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப கிரேட், ரைட்? லைக் இந்த ஜீன் எடிட்டிங், ஜீன் தெரப்பி, செல் தெரப்பி, அப்புறம் இந்த மாதிரி கியூர் ஃபைண்டிங் இந்த மாதிரி ரேர் ஜெனட்டிக் டிசீசஸ்க்கெல்லாம் கியூர் கண்டுபிடிக்கிறது. பட் ஹவு மச் வுட் இட் காஸ்ட் ஃபார் அ பேரண்ட் டு ட்ரீட் their child or themselves or their loved ones with cure?
So in the drug in the mari this big diseases, it all depends on the modality. Like modality na sonnena, the antibodies, like the taxidose sonnella, that's more like a monoclonal antibody targeting one of the triggers in the pathway for them to get the attacks, the HAE attacks. இப்போ இதெல்லாம் வந்து gene and cell therapy. And gene and cell therapy is still new. It's kind of evolving, right? And the FDA coming up with new regulations. So it's not easy for us. And people, gene and cell therapy are expensive. So the first gene therapy, the drug that was approved was for spinal muscular atrophy, which is also for babies, like they get that. That's also it's called SMA, really bad disease. And that was the first one, I think, approved. And that the cost was like 2 million. And when people see that 2 million, oh God, 2 million, like that's a lot. But then when you think about it, we are treating like babies. Then imagine, for example, patients with hemophilia or even sickle cell disease, and think about their cost for their lifetime. And And actually, some papers publish how much it is. It can be anywhere from 15 million to 100 million, depending on the severity of the disease. And so when you think about that, when you compare to that, this 2 million is nothing because you're kind of treating them, taking care of it forever, right? So that's how we should look at it, not just the one-time cost. But then having said that, this is still an evolving field and it's new. And we companies, will look at ways to make it much more affordable, like maybe manufacturing, large scale manufacturing. But as I said, it's not easy. Since I'm inside, I know why they cost so much because I explained to you for sickle cell disease, we have to take the cells out, culture them, and then edit and put them back. And, it's not an easy thing. Like, you have to have regulated labs and manufacturing sites and editing and so much happening in there. And in addition, all the data we have to generate to show that it is all safe and efficacious, right? All the R&D work. That's the reason why it's expensive. But we have to look at it this way: the cost, as I explained to you, like a lifetime. Like yeah.
So, Anna, like what you said was true, right? Like life pura insurance companies kudukkradukko illa nama pay pandradukko,
Right.
it's better like 1 or 2 millions kuduthu idukku permanent cure panni we having a good quality life and giving the gift of health to our child, right? Or to our However, like, not everybody is able to pay that 2 million at that point of time if they choose to. Right? Even though they are desperate to find a cure, they may not. Will insurance companies support? That's what Deepa.
Yes. So some insurance companies, if they have to be approved therapies, then some insurance companies are covering. But then the companies are also looking at ways to connect the cost depending on how effective the treatment is, because you cannot just charge and then like it's not, it didn't last, because that's why we follow them for that long, right? Making sure it lasts. And so as I said, it's a new area, new modalities, very novel, newer medicine and future medicine, and things will slowly evolve and it can become much more affordable. The best thing is now we are running clinical trials, right? Like all the companies doing cell and therapy, we enroll patients, and that's a good way for them to get treated, like getting enrolled in. And we also do long-term follow-up studies and and that's one way where patients can just go enroll, because they don't pay for anything, because it's all we are paying for it. And so that's a way. But over time, I'm sure all insurance companies will cover as long as they are approved therapies, and the companies will also look at ways to make them much more affordable.
So இப்போ நீங்க சப்மிட் பண்ண முடியுமா இன்சூரன்ஸ் கம்பெனிஸ்க்கு வந்து லைக் டு convince them, right? Like இது பாருங்க நீங்க இதுதான் data, so will you be able to do it? Or
no, once it's an approved therapy, that means it's FDA has looked at everything, right? It's all approved, right? So we don't
you don't get
really
that
work
part.
with. Yeah.